Christian Nodal is a Mexican singer whose career and personal life have been the most tumultuous and controversial of his generation. After numerous scandals, he seemed ready to reinvent himself, regain control of his narrative, and publicly confirm his marriage to Angel Aguilar, but his situation only worsened. And not just in one area, but what began as a love scandal has evolved into questions about his role as a father, a husband, his career, his relationship with his parents, problems with his record label, and even commercial control over his own name. For example, a video that was supposed to be romantic and dedicated to Angela ended in disaster. The situation with his parents, Christian Nodal and Jaime Gonzalez, is worse than ever, and his new artistic identity with the stage name El Forajido seems more of a last resort than a desired renewal. And all of this not only affected discussions on social media, but also directly impacted his career, with many concerts canceled in Mexico. So what's happening with Christian Nodal? After the controversial interview with Adela Micha, he seemed to want to put an end to the scandal. He tried to explain his side of the story about Kazu, Angela, his love for his daughter, asserting that it was all a misunderstanding created by the media and ultimately that his only fault was falling in love. But while he tries to appear as if everything is under control, the unfolding situations prove otherwise. When a person is struggling in one aspect of their life, it affects everything else. And that's what we'll see in this video. Christian has gone from wanting to improve his image to seemingly being trapped in a crisis from which he can't escape. Because even though she wants to regain control, things haven't been going well for her lately. And I'm going to divide this video into 3 parts. The first part is the legal battle with Kazoo, alimony, vacation time, maternity leave, and Inti in the middle of all of that. Second, there was the attempt to salvage his marriage with Angela. The wedding was postponed, rumors of a crisis circulated, and a romantic video ultimately reminded everyone of Kazu. And third, perhaps the biggest shock, was the collapse of Christian Nodal as a brand, his career, family, record label, concerts, and the fact that he no longer even controlled his own name. Be patient and follow along to the end, because this story begins as a love scandal, but ends with a complete identity crisis for Christian Nodal. Part 1, Nodal versus Kazu. The situation turned into a legal battle. Before all the talk about Nodal trying to improve his image began, there was already a conflict with Kazu over the issue of child support for their daughter. This was crucial because the conversation shifted from whether there was infidelity, whether Angela was interfering in the relationship, whether she supported their relationship and all that, to much more serious topics like money, child rearing, and the presence of Inti, their daughter, as a father. Unfortunately, that's a vicious cycle for many women who become single mothers. The agreement was that Kazu would receive a fixed amount each month, but it was an amount Kazu never considered fair. Because the cost of raising her daughter is very high and she is the daughter of one of Mexico's most successful artists, she could easily sue for more rights. But she also said that she has no intention of pursuing such a lawsuit because she considers the family system very patriarchal and exhausting, and that as long as she can provide for her daughter, she will do so. She was also asked if Nodal frequently visits Inti in Argentina, and she responded with a statement that caused a public uproar. What you see is what you get. He implied, though not explicitly, that he rarely, if ever, visits his daughter because he is clearly focused on his new life with his new wife. His singing career is secondary. Meanwhile, the interview with Adela was published, in which Nodal made things worse. Trying to explain, he mentioned specific dates that only made him look worse, especially regarding what happened in May 2024. He started that month still with Kazu, but they broke up on the 8th. He reunited with Adela on May 14th, asked his parents for permission to be with her on the 20th, and they married in Rome in a religious ceremony on the 29th. And it's become part of the everyday language that we all hope May will work out for us as it did for Nodal. Another thing that made him look really bad was that he talked about his intention to be a caring father to Inti, about the importance of his daughter to him, but Argentina is so far away and people don't realize how far it is, which is why it's so difficult for him to go there. Kazu didn't react at all in that interview, and actually, it wasn't necessary anymore since he put himself in this awkward position. But what was discussed was a much more serious issue affecting her, that she needed a legal permit to travel with her daughter and not be separated from her when he had to go to Argentina for work. She's been requesting this permit for over a year now, and Nodal's lawyer has made her feel as though he knows they have control over her and the baby. I've never felt worse than I did that day. I needed a travel permit so I could take my daughter with me. Then the mediator said, seemingly trying to offer helpful advice, that if I wasn't comfortable allowing it until she was 18, I could allow it until she was 5. She had absolutely no connection to my daughter's father because it was his lawyer who made the following statement. Don't worry, my client is fully aware that she can revoke that license whenever she wants. I still feel in my chest the same sensation that I and the two other women on that call experienced. We were locked in a deathly silence. I said, object to this? No, I can't accept this. This naturally caused a great deal of outrage on social media, so Christian Cesar Munoz's lawyer responded that Nodal had never refused any of Casu's permission, and even hinted that when Casu came to Mexico with her daughter, he contacted Casu's lawyer, Soledad Lizardo, to see if they could meet and if Nodal could see his daughter, but he was completely ignored. He added that nothing his client wanted more than to see and spend time with his daughter, and that he was even planning to legalize Mexican citizenship for his daughter to make things easier. But even if he said that was Christian's greatest wish, the evidence suggests otherwise, and he never denied having had that conversation with Casu. And as things increasingly resembled a war of words over different versions, she stated at a concert in Mexico City that she had no intention of remaining silent. I dedicate this song to all single mothers. Like many of you, I not only didn't get help but also suffered attacks. I used to believe that peace could be built in silence, but silence is often countered by conflict. When it comes to children, they touch upon our most vulnerable points, but in life, one can be as fragile as a rose or as fragile as a bomb. When a woman becomes a mother, a man's love means an immeasurable amount. As you can see, in an attempt to clean up Nodal's image, Casu's comments about her own vulnerability were completely inappropriate for him. If he wanted to project the image of a good father, she should have told the truth. Therefore, Nodal decided to sue, filing a lawsuit in November 2025 in Zapopan, Jalisco, where his parents live, with the aim of resolving the matter and avoiding this kind of scandal. Issues such as child custody, visitation rights, and child support for Inti were discussed, and at least in this respect, things went smoothly for him. A judge in December 2025 upheld his request and ruled that it was valid. And this is going to be very difficult for Casu because even though she lives in Argentina, she now has to deal with a lawsuit filed by her daughter's father in Mexico. That doesn't mean she'll win or anything. This is just the beginning. Until now, the dispute has mostly been confined to legal proceedings and official statements, but it has exploded in the media because of a song not released by any of them, but by other urban music artists. Rua Alejandro, along with Jacob and Tiny, released a song called Rosita, which alludes to Christian Nodal. The phrase Rosita has become a meme in Latin culture, referring to a hasty, impulsive marriage. It seems the mockery was aimed at Nodal, but there's another side to it. A heartbreaking story, a girl growing up without a father. This isn't something to laugh at or downplay. It's a serious issue prevalent in Latin America. And Casu didn't stay silent. She shared a post on her Substack titled Diss Track, in which she addresses male friendships and even mocks them, saying things like, "This song is too forgettable," and they think they're genius, believing it's a brilliant line because nonsense sells better than art. But what angered Christian was Casu saying that the real victim in this whole thing was Inti, but the real victim has a chubby face and smooth skin like a loaf of bread molded by God. She understands what's going on better than 1,000 useless rappers. That made my blood boil. So, Nodal responded on his Instagram channel that Casu was overreacting to a lyric, that the line was mocking him, and that she was exploiting a sensitive topic like motherhood to attract followers, people he claims paid to attend his concerts. But what struck me most was him saying, it's bizarre that in a song, Inti, yes, she's his little daughter, implying she's the most sacred, most important thing, but the context is to attack Casu. In a context where he has to sacrifice himself, thinking of his daughter before taking so many risky actions, he conveniently forgets that Inti is his little daughter. All of this led him to justify his lawsuit by saying it was all to protect Inti's image, since Casu couldn't share photos of his daughter on social media and, in fact, couldn't talk about him as a father. I'm keeping the whole thing about my daughter private so that whatever she decides to do when she turns 18 will have my full support, but I'm making concessions to keep her as low profile as possible on social media. In fact, the lawsuit I filed is precisely to prevent her from being hidden online. And as I mentioned, it's only intended to establish child support obligations and regulate her online appearance. So he can see her more often, right? Yes, seeing her is a starting point. And yes, given how badly things ended, having a written agreement about visitation money, everything is necessary. But the remarkable thing is that now that things have turned against him, he doesn't want anything shared about his daughter, even though he was the first one to reveal her face. According to sources, the first time was on February 14th, 2024. After keeping his daughter's identity private for a while, he began sharing pictures of her with 3 photos. The first showed Casu breastfeeding, followed by Casu and his daughter in a swimming pool, and finally all 3 celebrating their father's birthday, together with the caption, "Happy Valentine's Day." And by the way, in that photo, you see more of the baby's face than theirs. That's why many people wonder why it's fine when he shows it to the little girl, but it's a problem when Kazu shows it to her. That's why many of us feel that all this conflict, while having a factual basis and being necessary, is just a way to silence Kazu. Therefore, since she can no longer talk about this issue, it will no longer affect her image. As the Infobay article said, she wants people to forget that he abandoned her, referring to Inti. For example, you can see that she is at the peak of her career, with the album Latinage and an incredibly successful international tour, including concerts in the United States, Brazil, the Dominican Republic, and Mexico. She planned to leave Argentina for over a month, and guess what? According to reports, Nodal once again refused to allow her to take her daughter out of the country. And if that's true, what should Kazu do? Cancel the tour, leave her daughter for weeks with strangers? Of course, even with relatives wouldn't be allowed, since her daughter's father wouldn't even sign the permission papers, and that's supposedly why Kazu had to go to the judge again to ask for permission to take her daughter on this important work assignment. There's even a legal document in Argentina stating that Kazu requested permission from Nodal in December, and when he received no response, he had to turn to a judge. Fortunately, the judge understood the situation, recognized the trip as necessary for work, and allowed him to take Inti out of the country. This document was presented by Javier Seriani, but once again Nodal's group denies this version of events. Her representative, Alex Jimenez, said the child had a U.S. visa since birth and there was nothing preventing her from traveling. But if there was nothing preventing her from traveling, then why was there a document requiring Kazu to seek permission from the judge? This is more believable because there is a precedent. Kazu has spoken about this before, and I don't understand why Nodal would refuse to let Kazu travel with her child, especially to places near where he lives. It would be better if we could see her in a more balanced way, and above all, see her more often. But sadly, many parents abuse their parental authority to control and harm their former partners instead of acting out of genuine love and care for their children. And for that reason, I think this case goes far beyond a celebrity story, because if a woman like Kazu, who is successful, wealthy, privileged, and famous, faces such problems, imagine what thousands of other mothers go through every day who don't have any of those resources. But at least this whole scandal has yielded one very positive outcome. A legislative initiative to change the system, known as the Kazu Law, seeks to amend Article 4, which currently prevents parents from traveling with their minor children without the permission of the other parent with whom they share custody. And in cases where a parent fails to fulfill their responsibilities, whether financially or in terms of being present in their child's life, this signature will be completely unnecessary. The decision will rest with the parent who is currently raising and providing for the child. This issue was presented in Michoacán by Delegate Sandra Maria Areola, and she said something that I found very powerful. Parenthood cannot continue to be used as a tool of control when the responsibilities that give it meaning have been abandoned. And this, to me, is particularly bad for Nodal's image, because while he tried to portray himself as a caring, loving father and so on, he ended up being associated with a law that turned him into an example of what is wrong with the family system, as the embodiment of child abandonment. And what's the irony? After all the travel permit disputes with Kazu, it's reported that he's now been denied permission to see Indy. According to some media outlets, Nodal had planned that since his daughter was in the United States, where he lives, it would be a great idea to take her to Disneyland for 3 days. But he didn't expect the judge presiding over the case to so firmly reject his request. And why, you might ask? He's the girl's father. He has the right. He hasn't seen her in a long time. Yes, but the child doesn't know him. Although he is her father, he's not a part of Indy's daily life, and separating the child from her mother, from familiar people, to live with a nearly, and though it sounds harsh, stranger for 3 days wouldn't be good for the child's health. Things shouldn't be done that way, and this isn't a final ruling that he'll never be able to do it. But the judge has requested something very reasonable. Nurture the relationship, even if it's just FaceTime calls and regular visits, so that she understands you better, sees you as her father, and wants to go on a trip like this with you. Part 2. Nodal and Angela, a marriage that seemed beyond saving. His marriage to Angela is important not only in Nodal's personal life, but also in his career, because remember, he's a romantic singer, singing about the intensity of love, about how a woman seduced him, how she changed his life. And if his real self isn't believable, it's even harder to believe that he expresses it in his songs. Things would be very different if Christian kept his private life private. Perhaps people would know he has a partner and who she is, but not to this extent of exposure. On social media, at concerts, in interviews, and photo shoots, because once the relationship doesn't end well, that conversation will overshadow his music and career. That's why reaffirming their marriage to Angela is so important, to make people understand that they've loved each other for a long time, that it's true they acted hastily, but it was because of the same feelings, and from now on they'll even get married in church and everything will be settled. The problem is that every attempt to show their happiness inadvertently reminds the public of what happened and why they don't believe them. I think the best thing is to keep the relationship private, not to the point of hiding it, but simply to keep things private instead of having Angela attend all of Nodal's concerts and sing with him. They exploited that image to the fullest, and that's part of the reason why this scandal hasn't died down yet. In January 2026, Christian will turn 27. Yes, he's very young, yet he's gotten himself into trouble as if he were 40. Angela took charge of organizing the celebration and named it Nodal Fest, a 3-day party in Zacatecas. There was a party at a nightclub. Interestingly, it was located in a mine 280 meters underground called El Eden. There, she threw him a pirate-themed party, complete with details like a poster that read, "Wanted Nodal, alias Outlaw," with a 27 million peso reward. There were skull decorations, treasure, everything was perfectly fitting. But I also can't help but remember the One Piece-themed party Kazu threw for his 25th birthday. They also had a traditional street parade through downtown Zacatecas, a night party with a DJ, fireworks, and best of all, Angela surprised him with a thoroughbred horse as a gift, Nodal's first horse. And she personally confirmed on TikTok that she had given it to him, because some people had speculated that his father-in-law was the one who gave it, but no, it was Angela who gave it. And although the ceremony looked great and they were trying to show their enduring love, an awkward question arose. Where were Nodal's parents? Because neither they nor his sister were absent from the party, nor did they congratulate him on social media. And a few weeks after that party, right in Zacatecas, very close to the Aguilar family's El Solate farm, a shootout occurred. Criminal groups clashed with Zacatecas security forces, and unfortunately, this coincided with Kristen and Angela being on their way to the airport, and they were caught in the crossfire. Thankfully, they weren't attacked. There were no kidnappings or anything like that, but just going through it was traumatic, and that's why Nodal gave for postponing the religious wedding, which had been discussed for a long time and was scheduled for May in Zacatecas. We've talked a lot about getting married in May and all that, but we're postponing it because of the situation in Mexico. We wanted to have it in Zacatecas, and I was almost bombed recently, you know. A lot of people were worried about all of that. Yes, this is very serious. I laugh because you know how we Mexicans are? We're very easygoing. We Dominicans are too. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Of course. But yes, it absolutely, it'll be postponed a little longer. Yes, the wedding will be postponed. The postponement is understandable, especially since they were planning a large, multi-day wedding with celebrity guests like Mark Anthony. A lot of extravagance could attract attention. However, given all the issues surrounding its history, many are questioning whether this is the sole reason for the postponement, especially since no specific date has been set for resuming operations. The announcement only states, until the situation improves. Unfortunately, the situation in Mexico has lasted for years and shows no signs of improving. Many believe it might be a way to hide the fact that things aren't really going well for them, or worse, that Nodal has been unfaithful. But no, he denies that and says he is very happy with Angela. Angela truly lives up to her name. She's like an angel to me. I feel she saved me in so many ways. She filled my heart with love. She taught me so much, and in the end, I think she's the one who truly taught me what love is. She's the only one who didn't expect anything in return. She gave me everything, and she went through a very difficult time because she gave her all. She will be with me until death, and I will be with her until death. I think the challenges that life and fate present to us are very harsh and difficult, but thank God we will be together in the end, and amen. Amen, as we always say. But, it's inevitable that this interview brings to mind the interview El Gordo de Molina did with Nodal in May 2024, in which he also spoke about his love for Casu. And although, frankly, in that interview he seemed and sounded more emotionally cold towards Casu, he ultimately lied when he said he hoped she would be with him forever. And right after this was revealed, Javier Seriani declared that the wedding wasn't postponed because of insecurity, but because Nodal had been unfaithful. He claims he had an affair with a Dominican woman living in Miami for a while. He doesn't mention her name, doesn't show her face, only this photo, which frankly looks like it was created with artificial intelligence, in which Nodal appears to be hugging her, probably from behind. He says he has evidence, lots of evidence, but so far he hasn't released it, so we can't take it as his truth. The same goes for another mistress whom she proudly boasts about on TikTok as Nodal's lover. She began presenting what she considered credible evidence, the incredibly expensive gifts Nodal sent her, even conversations with Angela in which she confronted Angela about sleeping with her husband. She also claimed to be pregnant with Nodal's child and to have a daughter with him, but frankly none of it seemed real. The biggest piece of evidence is this photo, which looks incredibly fake. Some people have zoomed in on the image and said it's severely pixelated, that it's another photo of Nodal, and that it's a composite. No one in the reputable media believes this. But given Nodal's past, it's perfectly understandable that people are skeptical, and these stories are spreading widely, especially since he announced the postponement of his wedding around the time of the release of his music video Unvals, which ended in a scandal. At first, everything seemed fine. He claimed it was a romantic gesture for Angela, but what happened next was so impactful. He announced it with this photo in which they are both wearing identical jeans and white shirts, soaking wet as if caught in the rain in a wooded setting, and he says, "Tomorrow we're premiering Unvals, a waltz. Rain, a ring that looks like an engagement ring, and a burning heart. One of the most beautiful pieces I've had the pleasure of sharing with you all. I hope it touches your hearts as much as it touched mine." And she continued, because in her story, she also posted this image, the two of them dancing romantically with a lyric that says, "I will love you slowly as the world rushes by. One day under the rain, we will dance the waltz and our love will be known." Very romantic, right? But things started to go wrong the next day, because when the song came out, it turned out the model in the video looked exactly like Kazu. I swear, when I started watching the video, I really thought the girl in it was Angela. I mean, I didn't think anything else. I knew nothing about the scandal. I saw her from behind. The hair was identical. The clothes were identical. Even the smile was identical, like a side profile photo. But when she turned around completely and I saw her face, the resemblance to Kazu was astonishing. It was like a combination of everything Angela had, but with Kazu's face, tattoos, and jewelry. And that's when netizens started making fun of it. It seems like it wasn't just a mistake, but a provocative act on their part, because it was so obvious. I mean, looking at him, you can't help but think he looks like Kazu. It seems like they wanted to create a scandal, increase views, make the song go viral, and attract attention, whatever the reason might be, especially since they used so many symbols like necklaces, likes, ice cream, and songs. And besides, if you really pay attention to the video, it's terrible. The split screen makes it hard to tell whether you're seeing them singing on one side in a supposedly snow-covered cabin or pretending to be romantic on the other. But honestly, I think what we all noticed was the uncanny resemblance between the model and Kazu. And you know what the irony is? The guy in the video now looks like Kazu's new boyfriend. It's something that never ceases to amaze me. Their acting was also flawed. They were dancing, but you could see they couldn't stop laughing. It seemed like they weren't in love at all. And the worst part is, as far as I understand, the video is about a big surprise gift the guy intends to give the girl. The box is placed on top of the car so no one can see it. Then they finally show her the box, and she, to her utter surprise, opens it. Inside there was another identical box, and then another identical box. And that was it. They left us in suspense. We no longer knew what the surprise or gift was, while the best thing would have been if there had been more boxes and finally a small box containing a ring, and he had knelt down and proposed. There's something romantic about the lyrics, because strangely enough, amidst all the controversy surrounding it, the song was deleted. I paid attention to the lyrics, completely separate from the video, and they're beautiful. They have their own charm. And everyone forgot about that song because, as I said, in Nodal's case, his personal life and all his scandals were overshadowing his music career. This video needed a director, a production team, and all the necessary procedures, and director Juan Barbazan took responsibility for this huge mistake. He was interviewed by Alex Rodriguez TV. She said that Nodal's scenes were filmed in Guadalajara, while the model's scenes were filmed in Spain. She said Christian knew nothing about this and was not involved in selecting Dagna, the model's name. The casting was done by us, the production company. We were looking for Mexican actresses in Spain, which wasn't easy. We were only sent Dana's profile, found her suitable, and chose her. In this case, Christian didn't meet her, and the current talk about the resemblance between her and Kazu is something we overlooked. There was no strategy or anything like that planned in advance. It was my decision and the director's. But I can't understand how such an obvious resemblance to Kazu could be overlooked. This isn't some old, outdated story about an ex-boyfriend from long ago. It's a story that's still ongoing, and the scandal is made even more serious because Dagna, the model, has spoken out to tell her side of the story. She says she warned them that she'd been told many times she looked like Kazu and she didn't want to be associated with it. But they refused. They said they didn't even know about the scandal in Spain. This was wrong because if you're going to do a project for an audience outside the country where you're doing the work, then you have to research the context of the target audience. because the intention wasn't to target Spaniards, but Latin Americans. Looking at Dagna, I think she looks a bit like Casu, but the way she's portrayed here doesn't resemble Casu as much as in the video. So it makes people think that in the video they wanted her to look like both Angela and Casu. From the beginning, I was told that my appearance didn't matter because I only appeared on screen for a few seconds. So when the video aired, I realized that my role wasn't that of an extra, but the main character, just like the other actors in it. And at that moment, I realized that the story they wanted to tell through my image was completely wrong. This isn't the first time I've been told I look like Casu. You can see that in my videos. I've also told them I don't want to be associated with any image of this artist. They keep telling me they don't know about any controversy, that they don't know any artists because they're not famous in Spain. If that's true, then this management company is doing a terrible job. They hired her as an extra, but then gave her the lead role, paying her as an extra, even though she hadn't even been paid. We'll talk about that later. She still warned them about the controversy, but they pretended it didn't matter. In this case, our client is JG Music. We sent the video to JG Music. We assumed it had been approved. The director explained that the client was not Nodal directly, but JG Music. This company, run by Jaime Gonzalez, Nodal's father, implied that Nodal's father had not foreseen the problem. This shifted the responsibility to him. Either he's doing a terrible job or he's interested in creating controversy to make the video go viral, or he wants to damage his son's relationship, because I don't understand why he would let something like that be posted. And Nodal, no matter how busy he is, I think he should be responsible for reviewing what's released under his name. He should be the final censor after everyone else has approved, reviewed, and found something wrong with the video. I didn't give the video to Nodal, I gave it to JG Music. Nodal only told me about it after the video was released. In fact, the first thing he said to me when it happened was, "It seems like you hate me. You've gotten me into a lot of trouble." And we didn't even know it. Tell him, well, I've already spoken to him. The only thing left to do is apologize to Angela if she feels offended or anything because of this mistake. That's all we can do. We should apologize to her too. The director also acknowledged the potential damage to Dagna's career as she was dragged into this controversy through no fault of her own, and that this could lead to contract cancellations, lost opportunities, or a negative impact on her professional life. But strangely, despite acknowledging this, they still haven't paid her half of what she's entitled to. So far, I've only received a small fraction of the total payment for the work I've completed. This payment was supposed to arrive within 30 days, and until yesterday, they were still stipulating that I sign a confidentiality agreement for my second payment. I just wanted them to know that there's something more important than money: dignity. And if the production company truly regretted it, why didn't they compensate Dagna for the damage they caused to her professional image? But soon after, rumors of Angela and Nodal breaking up exploded, because if the public took this as a joke, imagine how Angela reacted. I think she must have been very moved by this romantic gesture, an affirmation of their love, and look, just like a model. Many believe this was the final straw for their already fractured marriage, and the news of the separation wasn't revealed by any content creator, but by Gustavo Adolfo Infante. As a reputable entertainment journalist, he carries a certain degree of credibility. As a woman, would you like it if someone did that to you if you allowed it to happen? I don't think so. Then Christian and Nodal told me, I can't confirm it, but they kicked him out of the house. Well, all that trouble was bound to happen. Initially, it seemed they had broken up. Angela no longer appeared at Nodal's concerts, but although there was no official announcement, they themselves denied it, showing their closeness on their social media. For example, his friend, the influential Kuno, posted photos of the three of them hugging on the plane. There was also another photo where Angela and Nodal were very close, and he captioned it, "My parents." There weren't many messages that showed everything was fine, like when Nodal posted this story about him riding a horse with Angela using Julian Alvarez's song Lo Tienes Todo, and he shared a photo of them riding together in a car. There was also a photo of their house in Zacatecas. They were also seen arriving at Hermosillo Airport to attend the Agro Expo 2026. They even took pictures together, seemingly out of sheer excitement. The problem is, after such a long time, the public is no longer easily convinced and sees it as an attempt to appease public opinion rather than something genuine, trying to portray them as a perfect couple, that they are in love and everything is fine, ultimately backfired. Because things could have been very different if, as I said, it had been best to keep private matters private since the wedding. And the same thing happened when Nodal wanted to project the image of a caring father and had everything ready to welcome her to his home in Houston, where he lives with Angela. Castro will be in Texas from May 8th with Inti because she has a busy schedule, a concert in Houston, San Antonio, and Irving. On the 11th, Nodal shared a video of the nursery, revealing Inti's name, a desert-themed mural, a private bathroom, clothes supposedly purchased by Nodal himself, a blanket featuring Our Lady of Guadalupe, and even a small toy sheep. On the bed was a book about a criminal who eventually found his daughter, as if everything had been meticulously planned and prepared for Inti. But instead of seeing it as a sweet gesture, netizens scrutinized the room closely and uncovered serious issues. For example, Angela had previously shared a photo of her dog sleeping on the same bed that now supposedly belongs to Inti. It's true that many dogs sleep on beds, and that's not a problem, but with all the suspicion that arose, many people wondered. So, the dog's room now turns out to be Inti's room. Symbolically, this might seem strange. Then, the urn in the closet appears, prompting the user to investigate and compare it to an urn they found online. There's no conclusive evidence. It could just be a decorative urn, but that's the crucial point and consequence of the whole story. When people stop trusting you, even a simple urn can become evidence. The wardrobe door looked scratched or damaged, and the overall theme of the room didn't have a childish feel to it, because surely no one cared about Inti's preferences. According to Nodal, Angela designed it for Inti, but who knows what her taste was like, since neither of them understood her. Oh, and there was a sun card. Remember, it means sun, and many people started associating it with tarot cards, with witchcraft, and honestly, to me, that seems a bit exaggerated. But setting aside the theories, the key point here is that Nodal tried to portray himself as a loving and caring father, and because people didn't believe him, they investigated and found evidence supposedly proving he wasn't. As I said, when you try to impose a story when the public no longer believes you, it won't work. The best approach is to remain silent and stay out of the public eye for a very, very long time. But apparently, Nodal didn't want that. He wanted to force the narrative to his advantage, and that's where the lawsuit against YouTuber Zorito came in. He sued Nodal for emotional distress, demanding 760,000 pesos, approximately 36,000 US dollars, arguing that Zorito's content had damaged his image, reputation, and even finances, which is why people stopped listening to his music or attending his concerts. Of course, anyone has the right to defend themselves if they believe something harmful has been said about them, and in my opinion, Zorito's content wasn't just criticism, it was bullying. He attacked appearance, used nicknames, and spoke very derogatorily, not only against Nodal, but also against Angela. But we also can't blame YouTuber Zorito or any other commentator for what Nodal does, says, and commits every day, which only adds to their discussion. Personally, I don't have evidence, but I have a feeling that part of this lawsuit is an offer to Angela, a way to at least silence the person who is hurting her so that things will change, a promise that her situation will improve. But Nodal is unlikely to win the lawsuit, because from what I understand, the law doesn't punish you for expressing offensive opinions, making jokes, or speaking rudely or cruelly. Instead, he has to prove that Zorito spread false or illegal information, and that this caused specific, almost measurable damage to his finances, image, or reputation. And Zorito remained unfazed, because despite the lawsuit and all that, he continued to portray himself on social media as an eccentric goblin, and that he wasn't responsible for everything that was happening to him. But do you know the irony of all this? It's that while he was trying to control Kazu, control Zorito, control the talk about him, it turned out he couldn't even control the most important thing in his career, his own name and legacy. Act 3. An artistic career in war. Even as a minor in 2017, Christian began his music career, signing with Universal Music at age 17, and for the same reason his parents also signed as his legal representatives. In other words, they own the intellectual property rights to the Christian Nodal brand for 10 years. But his resounding success, fame not only in Mexico but worldwide, record-breaking album sales, and a brand value, according to media reports, of around $120 million, has also become a problem. Sometimes, more money brings more trouble, and that's exactly what's happening, because his father, without telling anyone, including his son, who was theoretically the owner of everything, had secretly gone to the Mexican Institute of Industrial Property, INPI, to renew Christian Nodal's trademark under his own name. The trademark was about to expire, but in April of this year, it was announced that he had been granted a 10-year extension. This means that until 2036, all those rights remain with Jaime Gonzalez. Victoria Beckham did the same with her son Brooklyn, who many have commented, and I agree, looks like an English version of Nodal. The strange thing is that both parents did this when their children married into very powerful families, but the question is whether they have the right to do so. Following the scandal surrounding the Waltz video, Nodal distanced himself from the issue, declaring that he owned nothing, neither his name nor his music, and that the video was proof of that. He even went so far as to state at his Querétaro concert that blood ties are more sacred than friendship, and that he had experienced this firsthand. This sparked considerable public debate. On the one hand, some argue that Nodal's parents are opportunists who want to continue controlling and living off their son's enormous fortune. There are reports that Nodal is negotiating a contract with them until 2035, stipulating that they will continue to represent him, and if he wishes to terminate the contract, he will have to give them 80% of his assets. This information comes from journalist Audrey Tobel, who cited a source close to the singer. He said they are demanding that the companies pay royalties as compensation for everything they did to Christian Nodal. Christian has unfollowed both his parents and sister Melly on Instagram, and after speaking about them respectfully and kindly, is now silent. And he almost blamed his father for canceling his 2026 concert in Chile because he was supposed to be there, but it turned out the musicians and some members of his band didn't show up. And he made it clear that it was because his father refused to hire a private plane for them. And we all know Nodal has made many mistakes, but in this video, you can also see his frustration that as an artist with a huge fan base, he can't even make the most basic decisions to ensure his concerts go on time. And interestingly, this whole estrangement from his family started with his relationship with Angela Aguilar. This leads us to the second hypothesis, that the parents are making all these moves to ensure Nodal owns nothing in case things don't go well with Angela and they divorce, so that the Aguilar family can't touch a single penny of his assets. This hypothesis is circulating widely on social media, but it hasn't been confirmed by official sources, because it's also based on another theory about a supposedly real prenuptial agreement. This agreement stipulates that if Nodal is unfaithful to Angela or divorces her quickly, he will pay her $12 million, a huge sum, to secure Angela's future. But Pepe Aguilar denies this, even sarcastically. Look at what he's saying, that Nodal has a famous $1 million contract if he's not faithful. If there's one thing this guy lacks, it's stupidity. How can he possibly make that claim, for God's sake? And what is that? What kind of nonsense is that? And while it sounds like a good novel, a father saving his son from the Aguilar family, the reality is quite different. If he did save his son, why does Nodal say he owns nothing? Why does he stop keeping an eye on his family? And why does he say that even blood relatives can betray you? As I always say, you have to let your children make mistakes. Because of all this, Nodal is making moves to take control of his career. On April 22nd, 2026, he registered El Forajido, the Outlaw, as his new stage name. He has released 2 intellectual property products under this name, and he owns 100% of them. He has also deleted all his Instagram posts, and yes, it seems like he wants to build a new career, but all of this looks like a plea for help after all the mistakes he's made. He also had serious problems with his first record label, Universal Music. The case ended in a lawsuit, and there were even rumors that Nodal and his father could face jail time for allegedly falsifying documents, preventing them from retaining the copyright to his music. Universal Music considered Nodal the performer, while the music belonged to them. We're talking about older songs, his biggest hits, the ones that built his career. This is similar to Taylor Swift's case with her first record label, which later had to buy back the rights to her music because in this case, the music didn't belong to Christian Nodal. So in 2022, he switched to a new record label, but now he wants to leave Sony because it seems Sony isn't happy with the results Christian's career has achieved. The fact is, he hasn't had a real hit in years. Why? For the same reason I mentioned, his personal life is taking over everything. He's hired other people to write his music because he's focusing on other things. There are also many competitors emerging, vocalists who are gradually establishing themselves in the genre, and I don't know, but perhaps this return to Universal is for him to regain his success and restart his career. For a long time, he seemed immune to scandals. They can talk about Kasu, Inti, Belinda, Angela, but I still fill concerts. And he himself said, talent never disappears, man. The fans are still there. They're filling your concerts. Amen, my friend. Thank God your talent wasn't wasted. But what's being canceled are concerts. And for some reason, a lot of concerts are being canceled. The concert in Chile is another story. It's in a different country, very far away, and there are logistical issues. But even in his own country, even in the state where he lives, concerts are being canceled. In Puebla on March 20th, Acapulco on the 28th, Tampico on April 2nd are supposed to be rescheduled, and for all the others, tickets are being refunded. On April 9th in Nuevo Vallarta, it was reported that they even offered a buy two, get one free VIP ticket promotion, but still couldn't sell out. Even worse, in Ciudad Obregón on May 23rd, the official explanations were often logistical, citing reasons beyond the artist's control, and so on and so forth. This might happen once or twice, but with so many concerts canceled, it's being speculated that poor ticket sales are the most likely cause. Especially since most of the concerts weren't rescheduled, there simply weren't any concerts, and the money was refunded. RTN Medios took to the streets of Ciudad Obregón, hello Litzen, I went to university there, to ask people what they thought about the cancellation of the concert, and most of the responses indicated it was a consequence of his own actions. Christian Nadal's concert in Ciudad Obregón was canceled. What do people think? It's a shame because he's from our region, also from Sonora, just like us, and we should have supported him as fellow Sonoreans because that's who he is. But unfortunately, he did some bad things, and people never forget them. We don't forget what he did. Frankly, people are very upset, and he's an artist who deserves our support, but we didn't support him. Lyrics, I think that's very wrong because many people were waiting for the concert to end. So it's been canceled? Oh, that's terrible. No, but good. We don't want to continue anymore. Well, that's not good at all. For the fans, I imagine it's a huge disappointment. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of his music. I don't know. I think it's due to people's general taste, due to what's trending right now. And a day before I filmed this video, he released another song that will be on his new album called Intro Palkara, in which I noticed a different attitude. No longer the arrogant, talent cannot be destroyed kind of attitude, but it seems like a phase where he wants to reclaim his own voice, where he will show a more mature self, more aware of what people are saying about him, but clearly not admitting any mistakes, just humility, knowing that they are gradually gaining dominance over him. But wait and see, I'll be back. I have to give each wound time to heal, find ways to lessen the pain, and the criminal comes back, distracted by scandals. He realizes it, and I come back stronger for those who want to bring me down. The stories they make up and sell to you about me don't keep me awake at night because I'm a dreamer. I start alone with my guitar and listen to it in my own voice, no one else but me telling my story. I have to give each wound time to heal, which brings some relief. But the real question is whether a new version of Christian Nodal is really about to emerge, whether he'll grasp things, as we say, or whether all of this is just a strategy to create the illusion that he's in control. Because so far, every time he's tried something, it's failed miserably. Although, to be fair, while I was editing this video, Christian had what was considered a completely successful concert. He filled the bullfighting arena in Mexico City, the audience gave him a thunderous applause, and he was moved to tears. The audience showed him that he's not finished, that he still has support and a huge fan base. But even amidst that resounding success, there were still aggressive marketing strategies to achieve high box office revenue. Interest-free installments with a 15% discount, raffles for backstage access with 2 tickets, opportunities to take photos with him, etc. Many concerts do the same, but in his case, filling venues no longer felt as natural as before when in every city he performed, people longed to come sing along to his songs to see him. And the question here isn't whether he's past his prime, because he really isn't, but whether he can still be the artist who dominates discussions with his music, not because everything around him is falling apart. I'd like to sincerely thank Hostinger for making this video a reality, and also thank the members. I invite you to become members if you'd like to support the channel, but any way you can or want to support this channel is greatly appreciated. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. We thought we wouldn't be discussing this topic anymore, and it continues. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.